So for those of you that weren't here before, please check your phones. It's 3:47. We're going to have an informational meeting on House Bill 490, which I believe will be will concern how to engage with the commission on process and any other issues in here. In the letters I've gotten from utilities, not everybody sees the issues question the same. So the other thing that I would like to have a discussion on, you may have gathered, there's more than one legal theory that goes into this, particularly as to what we will decide and when we will decide it. If there's any concerns out there or ideas, bring them forward. At a minimum, I would like everybody that was on the invite list to send in contact information as to who we would contact if contact is necessary. Which if I answer an email for, if staff answers an email for Northwestern, I'm not quite sure where we'd put that, but perhaps MDU should be aware of the question and the answer as well, as should Avista, etc. So we're going to try to do our best to accommodate everybody in the flow of information. And I don't think this is going to be necessarily a seamless path, but it's a path we're on, and we're all on it together, so a little cooperation. So Will Rosequist is with us. It'll be his department that will, in no small way, be communicating with you on process, etc. And Lucas Hamilton, our chief legal, will take a look at any legal questions, and should there be a question on a question so far as the interrelationship between 490 and the rate case. I'm sure he'll weigh in on that as well. So with that, I will open it up. Do we have, Philip, do we have people online that are with us today? Okay, MDU is with us. Can you turn that on so that people can hear you?
Yes, we have MD Darcy Nigam, excuse me, Daryl Anderson, Chris James, and Travis Jacobson.
Okay. By any chance, from the Colstrip Transmission Group or from Avista? I know they were invited.
Give me just a moment. Do we have anyone on from the Colstrip group or the Avista group?
Mr. Chairman, if I could, my name is Mike Green. I'm the Associate General Counsel for Northwestern Energy. We are the operator of the Colstrip transmission system, and we'll be as the operator, will be responsible for preparing and filing the CTS, or the Colstrip Transmission System Plan, in consultation with all of our co-owners on that plan.
Okay, thank you for that. We also invited all the federally owned tribes, which are mentioned in 490 as being, I guess, communicated to through the Secretary of State's office, which at first that surprised me, but now that I think about it, vegetation management, et cetera, much of that will take place on their lands. Do we have any, do we have any representation from them today? They were invited. Okay. Perhaps after this, those that were invited but are not in attendance, we could send them a notification and they can watch it on video, because I don't want anybody saying they were blindsided by this, and I don't think we have any jurisdiction over tribal land, so that might be important. Okay, I see 4 in the front and 1 in the back, and The rest are staff. So please introduce yourselves. We'll go from left to right, and who you are representing, and then we'll open it up for comments.
Thank you, President Molnar. My name is Wiley Barker of the Crowley Fleck Law Firm. I'm here on behalf of Montana Dakota Utilities. And with me today is, as mentioned, we have Travis Jacobson, our Vice President, or Montana Dakota's Vice President of Regulatory Affairs, Darcy Nigam, who's the Vice President of Energy Supply, Chris James, who's Manager over Safety Management Systems and Wildfire Management, and then Daryl Anderson, who's the Director of Electric Distribution Services for Montana Dakota Utilities. And I will be here for support for them, but at the appropriate time, I'll turn it over to Travis and his team for comment.
Thank you, Mr. President, Commissioners. My name is Charlie Lane. I am the Director of Regulatory Affairs for Northwestern Energy.
President Molnar, Commissioners, I'm Jason Merkel. I'm the Vice President of Distribution for Northwestern Energy. And I also have the assignment of overseeing the wildfire mitigation plans for Northwestern.
Thank you, Mr. Merkel.
And for moral support, I brought my comrade, Nate Linder. He's the Director of Wildfire Operations for us at Northwestern.
Mr. President, excuse me, Mike Green, Associate General Counsel for Northwestern Energy. I've been in this role for just over 2 months now. Prior to that, I wore a lot of hats, particularly relevant to House Bill 490, and was heavily involved in that legislative process. So look forward to a discussion of some of the questions that were raised earlier in our session. Just briefly, Mr. President, we also have with us our lead regulatory counsel, Sarah Norcott. She has other commitments this afternoon. Will have to step out shortly, but she is also here in attendance.
Okay, speaking of coming and going, I did invite the BPA and their liaison, seeing as how starting about Townsend heading west and Townsend heading south, those are their lines. So they will be, she had another meeting scheduled. She said she'd be in and out. So as time goes on, I'm sure we'll want to coordinate this cross-jurisdictional transmission where the distribution and sub-distribution is coming off, and vegetation management and maintenance and all the things that go with it. So they are engaged and they will be in touch, I'm sure. So.
President Molnar, we'd like to give Northwestern Energy a chance to address some of the issues that were discussed earlier and some of the procedure to the extent they'd like, and we're happy to take second chair in the discussion today.
MDU is bashful. Who is going to take first chair?
I'll step in.
Okay,
and then,
Mr. Merkel.
and at least initially, President Molnar. First, we want to describe that our intent, because we don't want to drop something on the commission. We want to be fully disclose what our intended timeline is as we seek approval of our mitigation plans or wildfire mitigation plans. We intend that in the August timeframe, mid-August is what we're looking at least currently, to submit and file a request for commission approval of our wildfire mitigation plan. And as we opened with, we are the owner and also the operator of the CTS in partnership with other utilities. But with the operator obligation, we are preparing a separate wildfire mitigation plan that meets the essence of the requirements of 490. And we'll be submitting that as well, but it will be on a different timeline. We would expect to submit that a little bit later, as we do have to work in coordination with the partners upon that submittal. we know that there's a lot of questions around this, especially this being the inauguration, if you will, of such plan and this law. And we do come as Northwestern, fully intending to cooperate to help the commission, help ourselves, and more importantly, help the customers and the communities of this fine state in providing for House Bill 490. With that, I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Green because I know a lot of the questions are centered around the procedures. I will submit I did come prepared today to briefly summarize Northwestern Energy's wildfire mitigation plan. And if time sees fit, I would like an opportunity to at least touch on some of the high points, what's within that plan. With that, Mr. Green.
Mr. President, Commissioners, if I might, a little bit of background, I think, on House Bill 490 and the impetus for that. In almost every way, House Bill 490 was really tort reform. It was meant to address our concerns about runaway jury verdicts from outside of Montana. It was meant to address the rising and exponentially rising insurance costs that we are facing and passing on to our customers to ensure wildfire risk. One of the commissioners, I think Commissioner Pinocci, noted Montana has been identified in almost every publication that's out there as a high wildfire risk state. House Bill 490 does not really have anything to do with Northwestern Energy's wildfire mitigation efforts. Northwestern Energy has been undertaking those efforts. It's been involved in the planning process for years. The commission has been involved in reviewing the prudency of Northwestern Energy's wildfire mitigation efforts and its costs for years, at least the last two rate cases. So in those rate cases, we have well-established procedures for the commission to get into the weeds as far as they want on all of those costs, including and the prudency of those costs on a backward-looking basis, because that's what Montana has, is a historical test year rate regulation model. What House Bill 490 does is House Bill 490 puts in place a forward-looking process by which the commission can act as a check, can act as a reviewer for investor-owned utility, rate-regulated utilities wildfire plans. Our colleague Thor Nelson, who represents the large customer group in front of this commission, testified, I think, very eloquently at the legislature about the purpose of commission review in House Bill 490. I'm going to summarize it this way. Your job as commissioners is to make sure that our rates are affordable. That requires a balancing of our wildfire mitigation costs and efforts on a go-forward basis against the very real community costs that are faced and result from wildfire risk. And so what Thor noted is that if we just left it to utilities and wildfire experts, we're going to harden everything and we're going to plow the wires underground. If our sole goal is to eliminate wildfire risk, there are ways for us to do that. That is very expensive. It's very time consuming, and it's going to render our electricity unattainable and unaffordable for our customers. So the purpose for the commission review of House Bill 490 is to make sure that the commission is directing utilities in the right way, not to determine whether any particular cost is prudent or advisable, because that will happen on a backward-looking methodology in a rate case, but to say, yes, you've struck the right balance. We think that is about the right spend for the risk mitigation that those efforts are going to do. There was a lot of discussion about whether or not the commission would be liable for its review of the plan. This is not, and to step back, we have provisions in House Bill 490 that address that issue, saying the commission's review, along with the co-ops who have to review, or the boards of directors, or the councils of other types of utilities who have to review. The review of the plan does not expose them to any liability. The liability arises out of what you're doing, your activities on the ground that may result in harm, whether that's an ignition, whether that's a power interruption as a result of wildfire mitigation. All of those things can give rise to liability against the utility. This is not about the utility passing blame. This is really not even about the utilities asking the commission to tell us how to do wildfire mitigation. We think we know how to do wildfire mitigation, and to the extent that we need help, we go out and hire experts to help us do that. This is about the commission doing its job to balance the interests of our customers against the costs of our plan and the community need for utilities like Northwestern Energy to address wildfire risks. To that end, we view this as the review process was designed very much like the IRP, the resource planning process review. It's a submission to the commission. You can take a peek under the hood. You can solicit public comments. You can retain an expert to help you review that if you want to. But at the end of the day, this is a high level of review. This isn't saying, no, we want you to go fix that pole. This isn't, we want you to plow that line underground. This is, no, your risk identification tools, the tools that you are implementing and the analysis that you're doing strikes the right balance for customer affordability. That's really the goal. And then the other piece of this, which really goes to issues raised by some of the opponents for House Bill 490, they do want you to make sure and go through that our plan complies with the statutory requirements that the legislature set out for a wildfire plan. And so those, again, I think those are fairly clear. They're well articulated in House Bill 490, but it certainly is not an advanced prudency determination. And to the extent you're concerned about that, I know that in your staff can help you draft provisions in your approval order that says it's not an advanced prudency determination. And so those kinds of concerns can easily be addressed as we go through the process. But what is important for us from a litigation mitigation perspective is that you have reviewed our plan. You have told us our plan meets with the legal requirements, that we have struck an appropriate balance between customer cost and risk mitigation in this plan, or that you've identified deficiencies where we have not met those standards and allow us to fix them and come back and approve them. Why that's important is because if there's a fire and we get sued, it's not to say, oh no, the commission is responsible for that. That's nonsense. That's not we couldn't do it and no judge would let us do it. We can't push our liability off like that. But what it does say is we have an obligation to serve, and our regulator dictates the terms of our service to our customers, and they have approved this plan. And therefore, our compliance with this plan from a litigation standard, from a standard of care, our compliance with that plan is reasonable. And it allows us to assert defenses in the event that there is a claim against the utility arising out of a wildfire. It's not about shifting liability. It's not about escaping liability. It's about appropriately balancing our community needs for wildfire risk mitigation against customer affordability.
I'd like to ask Lucas Hamilton a question, if I may. Lucas, there were concerns brought up when 490 came out. Liability was one of them, but there might have been some other concerns. And this is a good time, being you just brought this up. What concerns did we have about 490 as a commission? Can you tell us about that and refresh our memory?
Yes. President Molnar, Commissioner Pinocci, you may recall that back in March, your legal staff did circulate a memorandum to commissioners analyzing the potential for exposure to liability under House Bill 490. The question presented, which I understand to be a fair reflection of the commission's concern at the time was whether House Bill 490 would expose the commission to liability for its review of the wildfire mitigation plans of regulated utilities. The concern is that the commission might be joined in a suit for damages arising from a wildfire occurring after the commission approved the regulated utilities wildfire mitigation plans. So that is my understanding of the nature of the commission's concern about liability in opposing House Bill 490.
Were there other concerns besides our share in liability?
Yeah, I would, yes. As we discussed in the business meeting earlier, there were a number of other concerns. And since President Molnar was the representative of the Public Service Commission testifying at those legislative hearings, I would, of course, defer to his recollection of all the particulars. But I know that we had discussed procedural concerns about the timeline for this process, about the record upon which the commission's decision would be based at the end of the day. So to dig deeper into the reasons why the commission opposed House Bill 490, I would either have to review my notes or defer to President Molnar.
Sure, but it's a good time to bring it up because I'm listening careful to what Mike's saying. And he's saying, hey, there's nothing to worry about, no liability. But there must have been because the concern was brought up. In fact, my next question is to President Molnar. The concern was so deep, you asked the governor to veto the bill. Can you tell us a little bit why you asked the governor to veto that bill?
Sure. Matter of fact, we had a meeting with the governor's representative, and Alana was there, Lucas was there, I was there. I forget who else might have been there. Trevor, I believe was there. Could be.
Potentially.
We had a lot of concerns. Number one is that we were being asked to do a fact finding of, this is the right plan, it's balanced, it's all that, without anything other than public testimony, which is hearsay, that the Consumer Council was left out. There would be no evidentiary period. There would be no cross-examination. And as we're running into right now, there's frankly not enough time to even go through rule writing, which the statute says we're supposed to do. So as a regulatory body, we did not see our purpose of regulation or capacity for regulation to go forward based on hearsay. On top of that, one of our concerns, just flipped through my mind here, I'm sure it'll come back in a second if I stutter long enough, but that the commission would be basing these findings without a fact, rather just hearsay, and then expecting that to stand up in court, we were pretty sure would not happen. To say that there would be no liability, if indeed this was brought about because in California, as Crystal Oil stated when she was here, that they disregarded this, they disregarded that, there was no evidence, whatever. If indeed they had no due process in California, and you get a runaway court, and I think we have examples that could point to where perhaps that has happened in Montana, when you have a stack of body bags for evidence, as they did in California, where parents died, melted to their children, trying to protect them from the flames because their wheels burned off their tires. The tires burned off their wheels. That you're going to get jury emotional rulings from the jury. We are not protected from that. The fact that it says in here that you can't use, I have it in here, so wherever the statute is, that this does not preclude this, it doesn't do that. The courts will blast right through that. Will there be as they said in Texas, the skies were darkened with attorneys coming in after their last wildfires. Will they make the allegation that we were too tight with the money? Well, look at these bodies, bang. So as to how Vista gets sucked into this, because we're not going to do any of their money, the co-ops were treated very differently than they are so far as being able to make their own determinations. There is no continuity in this, and that was part of our concern. And the last one, and I think this is fairly clever, it wasn't me that came up with it, somebody else said, I just use it a lot, is the Public Service Commission is a bunch of attorneys, accountants, and one old redneck from Laurel. For somebody to think that we're going to accurately gauge fire mitigation actions before the fire and have processes in place in Word, and anybody's going to think that we have the authority or the capacity to do that, even if we hire an expert, you hire the expert. He's going to tell us and we're going to tell you. We don't have the expertise. I don't know that the statute says that in our creation, it does now, that we ever should have. We look at expenses after the fact. And that's in a rate case. That's all we do. This is such an expansion. I would correct Lucas on one thing he said at the hearings. I don't think we went to the House hearing because we were simply advisory. We weren't determining that this was in the public interest, et cetera. So we didn't have any real interest. We were advisory. Suddenly we're the finder of fact. We're the determiner of was enough money spent, which is not what I think I found in your letter. It was what I found in your letter. And I think it's what we could easily find ourselves doing. And the second we say your nozzle wasn't big enough, what are you doing shutting down the lines, not shutting down the lines, whatever, do it this way, do it that way. We're liable. The same as anybody else that casts an order that's followed, whatever comes out of that, good or bad, and there will be bad. There's always going to be a lightning strike. There's always going to be a spark. There's always going to be a fire because somebody's catalytic converter driving along the transmission lines started a fire. He was a hunter. He wasn't part of you. Nobody knows that. There is liability in this thing, and it's tremendous. Those were our concerns then. What Lucas said in asking the governor to take us out, which the day we did that was the same day the legislature adjourned, so couldn't do a line item. He said it stands regulation on its head. It does. And those were our concerns. They were real. They were real, and they're still real. There's no amount of conversation that we won't push you into this. You don't have to. Lawyers will drag us into this. And whether it's the state through the Department of Administration covering the lawsuit, or whether it's ratepayers because the judge ordered it, the liability is there. So those were our concerns. Those are our concerns, and I maintain these going forward. Mr. Green, I see you're reaching for your button. But first of all, Commissioner Panucci, are you done?
No.
Okay. Mr. Green, please.
Here's my question, Mr. Green. Can you guarantee, and I'm excited about how you explain this, that we have no risk of liability, but can you sit here today after hearing this and say, Randy, the commission will not have liability? Can you guarantee that?
Well, Mr. Chairman, this is Montana, and I can't guarantee anything. I can guarantee that you as commissioners will not have any individual liability. I can guarantee that. That's about the only thing I can guarantee. I can also guarantee you that if the commission is sued, the Montana Tort Defense Department will mount a full defense, and you'll be entitled to all of the defenses that are available to the state of Montana under our sovereign immunity waiver statutes. And so there are limitations on the liability of the commission. I cannot, and I've been practicing law for a long time, envision a situation in which there is a claim of a claim for damages from a wildfire as a result of a regulatory action taken by this commission. Now, you might be challenged on your decisions in this case. There might be a judicial review, even though this isn't a contested case. There might be people who are critical of the commission for undertaking that. But as far as the litigation risk, what this bill has done is materially decrease the litigation risk facing all of the utilities in Montana, investor-owned co-ops and municipals serving our customers, and therefore reduced the costs and the risks that those customers bear by receiving service from all of them. If I could also just one quick response on the president's comment, because there were a lot of questions about why the co-ops The question that we got was, why are the co-ops not coming to the commission? And I suspect you know the answer to that. So I'm not going to go down that path. But the reason that they're treated differently is that the co-op governance is dictated by state law, and those are publicly elected. The co-op boards are publicly elected boards. And so the thought was that those board members are way more accountable, or differently accountable, I should say, to the members that they serve than members of an investor-owned utility board might be to their customers.
Well, to be fair, when you're saying that, we don't have fear of liability, my staff clearly thinks that we are. So can we agree that there's a possibility then that we could face liability
Well,
in the event of a fire and a lawsuit?
Mr. President, Commissioner Panucci, all I can say to that is I cannot envision a situation. I'm not a very creative lawyer, so I can't envision a situation in which the commission could be held liable. But more importantly, what I would tell you is the legislature heard those concerns, and the legislature enacted House Bill 490, and that's the statute we now have in front of us, and the statute that we need to try to implement. If we can do something to mitigate your concerns about commission litigation as we go through that process, we are all ears and open to that discussion. But if that means that we're not going to file a plan, that's not an option available to us under current state law.
I don't think that's what we're asking for. I think we just want to listen to what you say. You said we should have no concern over liability, but my crew says we should be. So I want to cover that, and we did, and I want to discuss it more, but another day. So let's talk about the purpose of 490. Can you tell me if Northwest Energy wrote this bill and gave it to the legislation? Where did 490 come from?
Well, Mr. President, Commissioner Panucci, I think I am qualified to answer that question. This was a bill that was drafted by a broad stakeholder group with heavy involvement from the co-ops, the large customer group, from other stakeholder groups, Northwestern Energy, Montana, Dakota, and then at the end, the other owners of the CTS system, as well as a number of the non-regulated transmission providers in the state, along with heavy involvement from individual members of the legislature who all had input, including the sponsor, who all had input into this bill.
Ratepayer, a question that's come up is they ask me, how does this benefit the ratepayer, or is this a detriment to the ratepayer? How would you answer that question?
I would say this absolutely impacts the ratepayer and benefits the ratepayer. I think just on the tort reform side, we expect to see material improvement in our insurance premium position. As you know, those costs are clearly passed through to our customers. We expect that if there is a fire, we'll have an opportunity to settle any fire claims at a much more reasonable rate because of the damage limitations that are enacted in this statute. Beyond that, our ratepayers as members of their community are huge beneficiaries of House Bill 490, not necessarily on our system because Northwestern Energy was already doing most of this work, but on the rest of the state, which will now be subject to wildfire mitigation plans. Every utility under House Bill 490 will have to have a wildfire plan drafted and begin implementation by the end of this calendar year. That is a material improvement. We are going to have utilities thinking about, acting on, and implementing wildfire plans in a way that has never happened in the state of Montana before and across the state. So we think there are ratepayer impacts, and we think that there are huge benefits to all of us as members of the Montana community.
I want to practice an answer with you that I've tried to give ratepayers. By 490 passing, it helps cut the risk down of a runaway lawsuit that maybe should be a few $1 million from preventing it from being $1 billion. Is that an accurate way for me to explain that?
I think that's a very fair summary of what we hope is the outcome, yes.
So I do believe that that's positive. But I still have to listen to the concerns of my staff while I try to explain it to the ratepayer. So you mentioned that the commission won't play a role in what steps are taken to prevent fires, or maybe we shouldn't. But I want you to know that a few years ago, I think it was Washington, D.C., the commissioners were challenged that this fire problem is quite serious. And it was the California fires that happened not just this last December, but a few years ago, where utility went bankrupt. And lots of arguments took place, like if they'd shut the power down to the whole system, the next line that fell wouldn't have started a fire. I think that's a good point. We actually talked about that a few years ago here in this very room, that I thought that would be a good plan for us. If the conditions were right and it was extremely dry and the winds were out of control, we just shut everything down, especially if it's in the summertime. People don't have to, worry about cold weather so much. And so we discussed that a bit, but I rose my hand and I said I wanted to volunteer on trying to come up with ways to reduce wildfire risk some years ago. And I've been working on that pretty hard. And so it's hard for me not to have some ideas to share with you, because that's something I'm passionate about. Can this commission share ideas with you on how to prevent fires? What do you feel about that?
Well, absolutely, Mr. President, Commissioner Panocci. Whether it's in part of this process or it's the various stakeholder meetings that Northwestern Energy has already held, they want all hands on deck. They want all. This is not as I indicated, this is not a Northwestern Energy problem. This is a we problem. Northwestern Energy is trying to do everything they can within reason to address the contributions our system makes to that. There's huge community benefits from all of our work, but no, this is not, we don't have the answers. We have a process, we have a plan, but we absolutely want input from the commission. Now, that said, what I don't think this docket should turn into is, Mr. Linder, we want you to go change paragraph 35 of this plan because I don't like that particular item. Right. I think this is really more what we see in the IRP planning process, where at very high levels, the commission can provide directional comments for us. Now, that said, you're a regulator. And if you want to get involved in these issues and you want to issue us directives, there are certainly mechanisms you can do that. If you want to make suggestions to Northwestern Energy on how to address wildfire risk, we're all ears.
Well, a few months ago, we had a hearing specifically to wildfire risk before the legislative session started. And the idea was to come up with a bill that might encourage reducing wildfire risk. And I think we have lots of science to support that wildfire risk due to utilities can be greatly reduced. And of course, burying the line is one very good answer, but the following statement is 10x, that it costs 10 times more. So anyway, that's something I want to be involved with. And the bill looks like it is a positive bill that supports lowering insurance rates. Now that it's passed, has insurance policy premiums lowered for Northwest Energy and MDU? Because they should have. Now that we've got this bill, you should be able to go to the insurance company and say, okay, it's passed. So now liability is going to be kept at bay. So our policy must have lowered. Is that what I can tell the ratepayer?
I don't think we're far enough along in the process yet, Commissioner, to be able to say they've lowered and they've lowered by X. What I can tell you is without this type of legislation that 490 provided for us, I think the real question is total insurability. Will we stay insured? I think there will be some time where and this is me predicting, okay? I think there would be some time before you would see a great impact to that, other than to say we have those protections in place today. And I think our biggest concern was going into this wildfire phenomenon was maintaining insurability. And it feels like we've we've overcome that, at least for the time. We still have to operate, and I think any utility is going to tell you that we'll go broken crazy if we don't think we're going to start a fire with our systems. Our goal is to not start the fire, that fire that's devastating to a community like all the things that you described in California and Maui and what we've read in the headlines. That's our goal. Maintain insurability for our customers because they'll suffer greatly if we can't have insurance, and mitigate the risk of wildfire to the extent that we can ward off that fire. That's where I think all of our utilities are commonly placed.
Well, to practice Mike's opening statement together, right? Because we're a team. 490 kind of says we are, right? What I had said months ago was that it's a possibility we won't be able to get insurance at all. So passing 490, you could say, gave us really the ability to continue to have insurance. And that is something I think that could be in your opening statement, and the possibility that rates may even get lower. But I think the opening argument is there was a possibility that some utilities may not have insurance at all. And I'll qualify that. All the utility would have to hear from the insurance company is Montana's among the highest risk states in the United States. I think we're number 2. As an argument, we may be number 1. But I think the reason California's number 1 is they have billions of dollars of lawsuits where Montana does not. And so maybe we're number 2 or number 3, but I certainly think we're on the list where an insurance company would say, we're not gonna do it. Then the answer would have been you would have had to be self-insured. Is that the road you would have went down then?
I don't know that I can comment on what the answer would be. I can just tell you that the answers wouldn't be good for customers.
That's exactly it. And I think that a press release to explain that these are some benefits we're looking at right now might look a little positive on 490 that has the shadow cast over it because of the concerns here. There is some things that I think are pretty positive, and maybe a joint press release letting the public know this could be a win here, because I think that, and luckily we have a heavy rain season across the United States right now with flooding and just great rainfall. It's cut back on the fire risk, but that could change very quickly by the end of August. We'll see. But that was a breath of fresh air, right? Well, anyway, that's what I had for you now, but I do think there's a real positive note, and I do want to play a real role in working with you, because I've kind of made this a commitment, because I raised my hand years ago saying, look, I want to be involved with lowering fire risk, and I've been working across the United States on that. So thank you.
Commissioner, I'm gonna put my lobbyist hat on and just flip to one thing, because I think there is one more key aspect that the Montana Commission can do, and that is to fully review and then approve our wildfire plan. One of the things we're going through insurance renewals, and one of the things that I know our insurance companies are going to want to see is, what did the commission say about your plan? Did they review it, and did they approve it? And I do think, now whether or not we see reductions or we just see an arrest on the substantial increases in insurance rates, I don't have those numbers in front of me right now, but because of the wildfire risks, Northwestern Energy's insurance premiums have gone up exponentially in the last few years. Our hope is to arrest those increases. And a real key to that will be for us to say to our insurance underwriters, we have litigation protection, we have a plan, and our commission has approved it, and our legislature has given us this defense. That is a key aspect of House Bill 490.
Well, a couple of points I wasn't going to mention, but now I will. It seems like aging power lines, especially distribution or sub-transmission, are more of a problem than transmission. And I see this with the cooperatives. I've volunteered my time with cooperatives. We do not regulate cooperatives, but my power is given to my farm by a cooperative. So when I attend meetings, of course I want to help. Some of the lines are 100 years old, they're still copper. So something I've asked Northwest Energy for, and I get the feeling they don't really want to give it to me, but I'd like to ask is a map that might show our most aged lines, okay? The ones that are at highest risk, our most aged structures, right? Transmission, you know, everybody was waving a flag on transmission. It seems like transmission has a much higher level of security. Usually the lines are higher, they're away from vegetation. Those structures are in better shape. When I have a fire, it's usually sub-transmission or distribution. So then the question comes up, you know, could we strengthen the structures with the new fiberglass carbon fiber wrap, which I have samples of? I've got a pop can in my office that has this substance wrapped around it, and you can drive over it with your car and it won't fail, right? So these are things I want to talk to you about and work with you on. So thank you.
Commissioner Bukajek?
So I'm still not clear about your opinion on PSC liability. And I realize it's a small piece in the whole bill, and the importance of everything, but I mean, anybody can sue anybody for anything. So, you know, once we leave our house for the day and get into our car, I mean, we can't live a day without a risk of lawsuit. And so there's no guarantees. There never will be. So what I'm just asking you, based on House Bill 490, do you believe we are adequately protected to the extent that we can be? And if so, where is that piece? Because I see section 2.5.10 says nothing in the section may be construed to create new liability. So I don't know if that's the piece that protects, or is there another?
President Molnar and Commissioner Bukacek, that is the provision that was added to limit liability exposure for the approving authority. At least as I understand it, and folks in the room can correct me if they have different recollection of the legislative history. On the question of the commission's potential liability exposure, as I hinted at earlier, this was a question posed to your legal staff earlier. We prepared a confidential attorney-client communication memorandum for the commissioners to explain our analysis of the bill as it currently stood. Now, you can waive your attorney-client privilege, but to my knowledge, that hasn't been done yet. So before I answer that question, I want to make sure you're aware that you're asking me to provide a legal opinion now in a public forum where there will be no more attorney-client privilege. So if it's the commission's direction to have me answer that question, I can do that, but know that doing so waives your attorney-client privilege.
Well, an individual was saying, a commissioner was saying that staff remains concerned. Is there a way you can answer that without getting too deep into that?
If it helps commissioners, what I would be most comfortable with, because I'm always leery of waiving your privileges, is to recirculate that memorandum so that all commissioners have quick access to it. If you have follow-up questions for your legal division staff based on what you see in that memorandum, of course, we are at your disposal to communicate with you, as long as we're not meeting with a quorum of commissioners.
Terrific. Thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners or staff? I'll just throw one out there real quick. Mr. Merkel, I like you. What you said, I have some umbrage with that. The insurance rates haven't fallen yet because not enough time has gone on, and these haven't been implemented. What has been implemented is that electric facility providers may not be assessed punitive damage unless there's a showing of clear and convincing evidence that the electric facilities providers were grossly negligent or intentional. That, to me, would be a reason to lower rates if indeed you had competition for your business. A lot of things in here, non-economic losses. A plaintiff may not recover non-economic losses. I know all the ranchers lined up and on the Senate side to complain about that. So you have greatly reduced your medical expenses. You have greatly reduced your damages. You've greatly reduced the reason for bringing a case. And if insurance rates haven't gone down with the part that is in here, how can you say that not enough time and things have happened when the purpose of the bill, the original purpose, because we weren't in this at this level at the time, has already passed and your liability has been greatly reduced leastways per the view of your chief counsel. And I think anybody else would just do a plain reading of this. When can we see some rate relief and not just, it could have been worse?
Mr. President, so insurance rates don't change in real time. So there are renewal cycles. Northwestern Energy has an incredibly complex insurance stack. And so this doesn't it doesn't adjust overnight. And so we're happy to present information about our insurance stack and if that's helpful to you, but there was no thought that this bill would have impacts overnight. I agree with you. Those effects, the biggest impacts of this bill are already in place. And from a legal liability perspective, but there still is lots, including insurance underwriters, investors, customers, other stakeholders are waiting to see what the commission does and what they say about our plan. They want to see our plan. They want you to review it and they want to hear what you have to say about it. That really will have a material impact. I agree with you though. Most of the legal protections that this bill envisioned are already in place today. None of that's very interesting to anybody. The commission's review and the commission's comments on our plan are what people are going to be looking for. And then there is a cycle. There is an insurance renewal cycle that we're all subject to.
I'm glad you think that we're more important to this as a commission ruling on future expenditures than the lack of liability that's been provided here. Could it be possible that they don't see the lack of liability in real life that I can see on the words here, on the printed word?
I'm not sure how they're reviewing that, Mr. President. All I can tell you is that we're hearing that we're waiting for approval.
So you've talked to your insurance company and they've said we're not going to talk about rate reductions until we see what the commission thinks about vegetation management?
I'm not aware if we've had any of those conversations. We're hearing that from lots of people in our community that they're interested in what the commission does with this.
I'm sure they are. With that, and this was we talk about the legislature and the committee hearings. I gave the commission testimony on the Senate side. It was 2 minutes for proponents, 2 minutes for opponents, and 1 question per senator, which I've been around a long time, and 2 minutes, 1 minute is not that uncommon. 1 question is not. I don't think anybody knows what this bill is supposed to do. But Warren Buffett, who owns Vista, is it Vista he owns? Pacificorp, said that because of the liability risk from fire, as I'm sure he's witnessed in California, that perhaps the day of the IOU is over with because people won't be able to afford the insurance. And the utility can't afford the liability if they don't have the insurance. It's like that big of a deal. And to me, this is a very simple solution to the point that in South Dakota, where Northwestern also works, they had a very similar bill to 490 before the South Dakota legislature, and it died in committee 6-1. I think this is the first bill to actually pass across the nation. I asked NARUC if there's any best practices, are there any bills, is there any law, what's going on? And they said, check California, they're working on it. So they may have missed one, but to my knowledge, this is a front runner, and there'll probably be a pattern going forward. And that takes me to what I think is a real critical question. Instead of talking to us about what we think about fire mitigation practices and cost of that. Would it not be more appropriate to talk to your insurance company about what they would like to see and what the cost reductions or maintenance would be based on that, as opposed to hoping they like what we do?
Thank you, Commissioner. And for the record, I like you too.
My
And
Christmas card
thank you
list.
for that. You know, when you think about the wildfire mitigation, and when you think about insurance companies and what they're asking us to do, I can tell you we've already been on a mission for several years because of their influence. Wildfire isn't new to us since we just passed this legislation. We just wrote this plan. We've been doing wildfire mitigation before it was even called wildfire mitigation. We've been addressing the problems on our system. From a grid hardening perspective, we've been in vegetation management. Absolutely proud of Northwestern Energy in vegetation management because we took probably one of the most active approaches towards both system preparedness or grid hardening than many of the utilities did in the West. We started our grid hardening programs for reliability in 2010, 2011 timeframe. They set the foundation for what we're able to do today from an overall wildfire mitigation perspective. Much of that was driven by insurance companies and in lowering our risk. So we've been having those conversations. We've been influenced by them. That's why I can say that we have a group of experts that in total do wildfire mitigation pretty darn well. And the plan that we've put together from a nuts and bolts kind of plan, it has the same categories, the same objectives as any other utility that's in the space. And we may vary some in where we're at and the maturity of where we're at with some elements, but Northwestern Energy's in the space. And we're competing with the same things that other utilities are doing in the space. The fact of the matter is, and I say this with the most respect to all of you as commissioners, we are where we're at today. The law is passed. There's requirements. And we know just by the passing of that law that we have reduced liability for the company. We've reduced the potential impact to customers, to our customers, and to our communication or communities through the passing of this bill. And at the end of the day, we are where we're at. And I think as utilities, and I don't want to speak for our peer utilities that are here today, but I think where we're at today is what do we need to do to move forward, to maximize all of those positives for not only our companies, so that we can maintain and operate financially viable utilities, contributing to the economics of our states. How can we continue to do that? How can we move forward with this bill and achieve all the benefits of the bill, and most importantly, keep our communities safe? And I hear, President Molnar, what you say about PacifiCorp and the Berkshire Hathaway and that approach. But if we don't mitigate wildfire and we don't mitigate the risks, if the governments are doing it as municipals. It feels like the effect is the same or worse. And that is damage occurs and people are left without anything. When I'm comfortable with the bill that's put in place as an operator within this state, a utility operator, but more importantly, as a resident and a citizen of this state, that bill still affords me the opportunity to be made whole from our damages. It just prevents from frivolous lawsuits that are going to damage a company or a co-op from being able to do what they need to do, and that's provide utility service as safely as we possibly can.
We'll go back to Commissioner Panucci right now, but immediately after that, we have 5 people online. I believe they're all from MDU. I will ask if any of you have any questions or comments as soon as Commissioner Panucci is done.
Okay, so I'm in California working on my volunteer position on reducing fire risk, and they pull me aside and tell me a utility charged a few $1 million to reduce fire risk, and then they were questioned what they actually did, and they couldn't come up with an answer. So apparently they got money and then really didn't implement a plan. A few weeks ago, I'd asked Northwest Energy in a hearing, with vegetation management, are we cutting the branch a foot or two farther away from the line than we were yesterday? I didn't get a very good answer. In fact, the attorney for Northwest Energy objected to my questioning, saying that that wasn't in the testimony. So I read the testimony and I say, advanced vegetation management. Advanced vegetation management must mean that we're doing something today that we weren't doing yesterday. What is it? I don't think we had a good answer. And I want to practice that, because if we're going to say advanced vegetation management, by God, we got to do something today that we weren't doing yesterday. The branch has to be farther away, right? It has to do something that's going to lower fire risk. I did visit with the insurance companies, asking them from when I spoke in Oregon and San Francisco, what it is you're looking for. And their answer, and of course I didn't speak to the whole industry, was, well, we're trying to understand what those good answers are to lower rates. And my answer was, to that, science and proof of a product that is making a difference, and we are going to get vegetation farther away. I'd like it to where if a squirrel's on the transformer, that the transformer, contacts are farther away than the squirrel can reach, okay? That way, that may be a small investment for the transformer to have a wider spread, if you will. But then if it ensures the squirrel can't make the contact, it's not exploding into sparks, falling on the ground, which happened just a few days ago, really, in Helena, right, causing an outage. Or we insulate that with a small cost. And I understand that it's hard to say, and when I hear the utility say this, please don't do it. Don't say, well, now Panucci wants us to go fix every single transformer. That's not what I'm saying. I say we do that as we're working on the transformers. If we're putting a new transformer in, we ensure the contacts are farther apart than a squirrel can reach. If we're working on a transformer, we put some sort of, protective layer that won't make contact. I'm not asking you to go out and do that to everyone, but we start doing that from now on, and then we're able to document it to show the insurance company. We had the carbon core industry from several manufacturers say that no properly installed carbon core line has started a fire. That's in testimony in that hearing. Now, that cannot be ignored. And I've told the insurance company, if we've installed 300,000 miles of this stuff around the world and it hasn't started a single fire, if the investment's made by the utility, you've got to give them a break in insurance. And they say, okay, that's science and that's fact. We can look into that. Now, that's what they've told me. Okay. I'm working on this, right? The other thing that has been brought up is this is expensive. Now I have an industry, a company coming to me saying they're going to produce carbon core and it'll be the same cost as steel core. And they'll cut line loss by 20%. If that's truly a fact, if we're not using that product, we are in fact spending more money and misusing the money that we're spending. And so we got to look into that, right? So anyway, I want you to know that these questions you brought up are important. And I think the timing, when the insurance policy's coming due, not the day it's due, maybe a month before it's due, could this commission with the utility sit down with the insurance company saying, look, here's some science, here's some things we're going to put in place. The branch is going to be 3 or 4 feet farther away than it was. Policy is going to change. We're going to get that contact on the transformer where the squirrel can't reach, okay, as we're working on them, not going out to change them all today. If we're going to install new line or replace old existing line, we're going to meet these new standards, not asking you to go out and change all the line now, right? When we're looking at a structure, we can put a coating around it where the fire can't get through it. This is science with fact, and I think working together, we can lower those rates. And then if we're successful, we do a joint press release to show that we're working together and getting things done. And I've been working on this, what I'm talking to you about, for years. So anyway, those are some ideas that I wanted to share with you.
Mr. President and Mr. Merkel, before you answer that, I'd just like to jump in because there was some discussion there about the testimony in the general rate case, which we want to avoid. So if you could make sure that your answer doesn't elaborate or expand upon, the record that we have in that case, that would be great. Just looking forward at what Northwestern has plans for its upcoming wildfire mitigation plan filing.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Commissioner, all I can say is I agree with so much what you're talking about, and I just would love to go spend hours and hours and hours with you and do some show and tell across our company, because we are doing so many of the things that you're talking about. We're already doing. We've been doing it for most of my career. We started Raptor framing structures in the late 90s in order to create more spread, because birds can be an ignition source if they contact 2 phases. We've been installing guards on all of our transformers, cutouts, and arresters, and using covered conductor for decades, protective boots, all those things. That's all part of what we've been doing in the name of reliability. And the things that we're doing now, moving from the name of reliability to enhance those reliability things, because there's 2 categories where reliability operates in parallel with reduced fire ignition. Anything you're doing from a system hardening standpoint, anything you do from a vegetation management, whatever you do, you're going to gain in both reduced fire ignition and you're going to improve reliability. You're going to have less faults in those 2 categories. But that's not the only answer. And the reason why it's not the only answer, and you stated, we started a long time ago and we're not done. We still have a lot more system to cover. We have a lot more system to improve. And we need to continue those efforts, just like you're describing, with all the tools you just described are in that toolbox called wildfire mitigation. And I think for most utilities, that is the case. It's an all-in approach. There are 2 categories that, when we implement them, they impact negatively reliability. Our system's less reliable. And the easy answer to that is, it's hot, it's dry, it's fire season, shut the power off, we'll see you in December. That would be hard on our reliability. But effectively, what we're doing with two strategies called EPSS, or Advanced Power Line Safety Settings, some utilities call it Fast Trip. What you're doing is during times of the year when the environment's at its worst, where we typically are very reliability conscious, where during the winter months, during the wet months, we're going to try to do everything we've done since I started with this company. And that's if the power goes off, get it back on quickly. And we're even going to try not to let that power go off. But when it's hot and dry, we go the other direction as utilities. And this is new for us as utilities because we've always been keep it reliable, keep the power on. Now we're moving into a time of the year that we don't have time to grid harden everything. We don't have time to cut every tree that probably needs to be cut between now and this August and September. So we use other strategies. We use EPSS, which is effectively, if there's even a blink out there, we're going to shut the power off until we patrol and go figure out what it is. And we're going to shut that power off at lower energy than we otherwise would during the normal season. And then the other one that hurts reliability is PSPS. That's just, it's going to be hot and dry and windy tomorrow. We're going to shut it off. Certainly that's going to impact reliability. So that we've had discussions and you bring things up, it resonates with me because it is exactly what we're doing, what other utilities are doing, but it's not a singular approach. It's an all-in. The map that you requested earlier that you said I won't show it to you, I would love to show it to you, but you have to see it in the form that I give it to you because we have it. We have it in four
Excuse me,
different
in the form
quadrants.
of a what?
The map that Commissioner Pinocci asked for earlier, the one that says this is our old system, that map.
High risk.
We certainly have the high risk. We have it based on our performance. I just have to be able to show it to you in the way that we need to present it to you. I have it today. I've been dying to show it to you, Commissioner, to show you that we're not far apart in exactly what you're asking for. In fact, I'm not sure that we're apart at all. I just need to show it to you.
490 makes us a team now. But I have more questions, but I want to listen to the president, and he may have some people who want to ask questions online, and then I'll get back to
Thank
where
you,
I'm going
Commissioner.
next.
President Molnar, appreciate the opportunity to address the commission today and certainly have appreciated all of the comments both from the commission and from Northwestern Energy. We don't want to rehash any ground. I know the commission's been here for some time today and tackled a lot of important issues. So we'd just like to focus on kind of status and really the subject of the meeting, which is implementation of 490 to the extent we can. To that end, I want to give some time to Travis Jacobson, who's the director of the vice president of regulatory affairs, and to provide some initial comments. And if it's if the commission's amenable to it, we'll keep those very short and address any questions, and then at the commission's pleasure. So, Travis, if you're able to unmute and video mute.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Wiley. I don't see a camera setting. Okay, there we go. Okay, it took just a second there to jump on. Thank you, President Molnar, commissioners. Thanks for the opportunity to present to you today. MDU crew is kind of spread out this week, so unfortunately we weren't able to be there in person. Wiley, I think, summarized very well what we are here to do today. And I think Mr. Green also made an important point that, you know, the law before us today requires that Montana Dakota does prepare and present a wildfire mitigation plan. We're on track to do that. I would just point out that Montana Dakota's plan will cover all 4 states in which we operate. And 2 of our other states, North Dakota and Wyoming, also enacted wildfire mitigation plan processes in the last legislative session. So we are working together to make sure that we have a cohesive plan, one that covers all aspects of all the legislation. And, you know, I think there weren't many stones left unturned. So I think we can keep it pretty brief, but I do have with me today Chris James, and he is the subject matter expert. Daryl Anderson on the distribution side also can talk quite extensively with a lot of detail. And then I also have Darcy Nigam with as well. I would just note that we are working on our wildfire mitigation plan. We do expect to meet all the deadlines as they come about. One thing that I would note, there was talk about recovery and what's the appropriate vehicle for that. We do plan to file a general rate case on our electric operations this year yet. And at that time, we would address the recovery side of that, whether that's in our traditional rate making or if we were to go down the path of proposing an alternative mechanism, which rider for better terms. You know, I think that our mission is to provide a balance, and that is the balance of cost and reliability and safety. And it's a tough thing to do. There was a lot of talk about Northwestern and that they have been working on wildfire mitigation for a long time. Montana Dakota is similar in that, where our transmission systems have been built with mitigation in mind. And on the distribution side, I think I agree with Commissioner Pinocci that there is a lot of risk on that side. We're working hard to make sure that we address all of those risks as well. So with that, I guess I would just stop there. If you have specific questions that I can answer, I certainly can. Or if we want to talk more about the plan specifically, again, I have the other individuals attending as well.
Do any of the other MDU online people, contributors, have anything to ask or to say? Seeing none. Thank you, sir.
Hey, I wanted to follow up on maybe a hearing we can work on together as a team, work with Lucas to bring the insurance industry to a hearing here at the Public Service Commission. I'm sharing ideas here where the utilities, MDU, Northwest Energy, and we are looking at policy change that is ensuring that we are going to reduce fire risk for the use of science that's available, technology that's available on many aspects, the whole spectrum, from the structure to the line. Can I get a policy guarantee or a policy that says anytime we're working on a transformer, that boot's going to go on or the contact will be farther away than the squirrel can reach? And I don't know if we got to find out what the world record squirrel is in Montana and find out what his basketball reach is. But if we can show that, we can say, look, if we look at how many squirrel problems we've had in Great Falls, it's been a real problem, right? And then, you know, we can talk about birds. I know that I've had a lot of problems in Augusta, Montana with the off-spray, and Northwestern Energy and I have had to go to Augusta in a special hearing, I think 5 years ago, and address that. And the refrigeration units burned up, you know. But anyway, I think, what do you guys think of the idea? We bring the insurance industry, and I'll tell you who else is excited about this, Jim Brown, who now served at this commission, is now our insurance guy. And he says, Randy, I see some merit. Now, I'm pretty sure he'd show up and say, hey, look, if they're demonstrating real policy change, he'd be on our side to say, let's encourage some lower rates. What do you guys think of an idea like that?
Commissioner, if you were to put something like that together, certainly we're going to attend. I think the focus that I would just like to start with, however, is the commission with the company, so that you have a crystal clear understanding of the things that we are doing. Like, for example, you brought up standards, and I don't want to go into depth into that, but that's been our standard. Whenever we have a new cutout goes up in the air, a new cutout, new arrestor, the conductor's covered, that's been our standard for some time. And so I think there would be value in because I don't think we've really done it yet with the commission, get into the depth of what are the particulars within the wildfire mitigation plans.
They tell me that fire risk meeting I had was the first of its kind in the country that they know of. This particular insurance hearing also could be the first of its kind. If it is, the insurance company really has to take notice that we're being more proactive than other states, especially if we're doing something and bringing things up that haven't been done before anywhere else. So anyway, I sure encourage it, and I'll get with Lucas on that right away.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Not seeing any hands raised online. Are there any further questions or comments from participants? Any further questions or comments from staff or from commissioners? Seeing none, I'd like to thank you all for a very beneficial meeting. I'm sure that as we go on, there'll be more questions, more comments, and we certainly will entertain those. Thank you all.
Thank you.